Good evening, President Lopez, Vice President Page, board members, and Dr. Miguel. Tonight, it's my pleasure to provide you with an update on school reentry. We understand how important it is to keep you informed about the process of reentry and appreciate your willingness to review all of the updated versions of this presentation that were shared with you. We shared with you on Friday, November 20th, November 24th, and then yesterday, November 30th. As you all are aware, things are changing so quickly, and we've been making updates to the presentation to provide you with the most timely information that we have. So tonight, you'll have an opportunity to hear from representatives from the Wyandotte County Health Department to discuss the COVID numbers in Wyandotte County, as well as what we can do as a community to help slow the spread. You'll also be hearing from our health services coordinator here in the district to provide you with information about the COVID cases within the district, as well as where we are with staffing nurses. Our HR department will also be sharing how many accommodation requests we've received from our employees. And as you know, we have asked that parents and guardians make a determination of how they will enroll their students when we return, either in person for hybrid learning, or if they would like to remain remote. Tonight, you'll get an update on our most recent numbers, as well as our plans to get more of those forms submitted from our families. And finally, our operations team will also be sharing some of the issues that they're facing currently with employee absences and the impact it's having on the work that they do in the district. Although this is an informational update to the board about reentry, we will be making some recommendations on reentry that will require board approval. And that we hope that this information that we provide tonight beforehand can help you support you with making the best decision, either tonight or possibly at our upcoming board meeting on December 15th. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. As a reminder, the Board of Education determined that KCKPS would use the KSDE gating criteria to help guide their decision-making on school reentry. Although this is a helpful tool, this is not the be-all end-all, and that the board has the ability to make whatever decision is the best that supports our staff and our families and our students in the district. So this section that you're seeing here of the gating criteria shows the numbers that constitute the color-coded levels. And red is where we indicate that we are in at high levels of either positivity rates, community gating criteria, and so forth. And so when you're in the red, it impacts the sections of the learning that happen within a district. And so what you're seeing here is the KSDE recommendations for when a county is in the red on the other gating criteria. So when we're in red, school activities are remote, spectator audiences are remote, visitor access is none, and then playgrounds are closed. And so that is the guidance that they provide. But again, it's just guidance. The board can make the decision that's necessary for our families and our students here in the district. So I hope they're still with us. I know that we gave them a time, but it went a little longer than we thought. But I would really like to introduce Dr. Erin Corvo, the Deputy Health Officer, and Elizabeth Gronway, the Chief Epidemiologist for the United Government of Wyandotte County, to share where the county is with their COVID positivity rates, as well as share a message about what the community can do on how we can continue to help slow the spread of this virus. So if they're with us, I'd ask that they unmute and talk to us about where we are.
Matt, I don't think they are with us any longer. I think we did not estimate the time very well. So I'm going to keep an eye to see. I think Elizabeth, Ms. Gronway, is planning to come back, but I'll keep an eye out and let you know if she does, okay?
Thank you, Dr. Miguel. As we continue, though, I will show you the numbers. This is what is actually currently on the Wyandotte County COVID hub. And I think Elizabeth Morris, our health coordinator, is actually on the call right now. And so she can kind of explain these numbers too. And then when Dr. Elizabeth Groenway and Dr. Corvo could come back on, we can hear from them as well. So Elizabeth, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. Good afternoon or good evening. I can give you a little bit of an explanation about the scorecard that you see in front of you. This is what's listed on the Wyandotte County COVID Hub, and it gives us a snapshot of the 7-day rolling average of the trends that are happening within the county. And this is reflective of November 16th through November 22nd. And so obviously things have changed since then, but I think Dr. Corvo and Elizabeth Gronway can hopefully they'll be able to join us and give us a little bit more updated information regarding where we are right now. But according to this 7-day average for that week that's reflected, they were seeing about 118 positive cases daily, and the percent positivity was at 32%. They were also showing that testing turnaround time was taking around 26 hours. And I'll tell you, about a month ago, we were closer to 18 to 24 hours of turnaround. Our staff members were getting results back very quickly. And now that testing turnaround time is taking much longer, they are estimating it to be around 2 to 4 days now. And that's because of the next box that you see, which shows that the county is averaging about 720 testing people who are presenting for testing within the county. I know that as of this morning, yesterday, they had 450 people who tested just at the health department alone. And they reported out that 26% of the people that tested yesterday did come back positive. The last box there just reflects the trends reflected from the Mid-America Regional Council, which is the organization that manages emergency response here in the KC Metro. Again, 2 weeks ago, they were reporting 162 average daily hospitalizations across all the hospitals in the county. But I can tell you, based on the KU Med update this morning, they had 159 patients that were hospitalized due to COVID. 101 of those were in the 10-day isolation or contagious period, with 58 in the recovery phase. But again, that is 159, and that's the probably the highest number that they've ever reported out. This slide here gives kind of a picture of what I was seeing, what our nurses were experiencing here as far as staff case investigations for the month of November. So I broke it down by week to give you guys kind of a picture of what we are seeing in staff. So that first week of November, we did have 54 different staff members who had reached out due to having been exposed or having symptoms, and so they called in sick to work. Or who themselves had already tested positive. And so you can see that we had 17 out of that 54 come back being positive in that first week. The second week, it was 20 people out of a total of 49. The third week, 17 again out of 82, out of 99. And so we saw a more significant number of staff exposures that week due to positive cases or people that were symptomatic and then later tested positive. You can see that across those 3 weeks, the number seems to be about stable. You know, we had 17 and then 20 and then 17. But if you look at last week, which we know was a shortened work week, that reports out 11/22 through the 24th is Sunday through Tuesday. And I don't usually speak to people on Sunday, so these were conversations that were had on Monday and Tuesday alone. And just in those 2 days, we had 16 out of 26 staff members who did report back being positive. There's additional cases that have come in, obviously, since that time, and that adds, kind of reflects back on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week. So that's kind of what it looked like for the month of November. I found it interesting when I added up the numbers that out of the 228 contacts that occurred between November 1st and November 24th, 70 of those did test positive, and that was 30%, which is just right on target with what the county is seeing as well.
Elizabeth, we're going to have Lenora Miller just speak briefly about what do we do as a district when it comes to cleaning when we do have positive cases in our buildings. And we wanted to address that because we know that that was a question that the board had. So Lenora, would you be able to answer that question?
Absolutely. Yes, we have a communication thread that we have actually perfected since the beginning of the pandemic to involve our nurses, to involve our employees, to involve our HR staff to involve our leave staff. And then at the end of the day or the end of the moment, we involve our custodial leadership. And when we learn of a positive case, each particular event can dictate a certain method of response. For common response, we do have designated staff that go in and clean and disinfect the area that is defined as the exposure area or common threads or pathways or areas. And that would primarily be the custodians and or a combination of custodians and nutritional services staff if the event is in the kitchen area or where we're preparing meals. The length of the time that the area would be closed is kind of dependent on the location, the specific situation, and the need to utilize that area. For example, if we can close off that kitchen or those areas for 24 to 72 hours, we do that first. If it's a specific area where we need to typically respond right away, where there's no employees in there, maybe it's overnight or early morning or in the evening, once we are communicated that there is an issue, we would go in time-sensitive times to disinfect. We typically don't like to keep an area closed, but we also don't like to disturb the area for 24 hours if we can.
Thank you, Lenora.
You're welcome.
I hope that was able to answer the question from the board. So we're going to move on here. And Elizabeth, you'll talk to us about where we are with our nurse staffing.
So of course, because we're in a pandemic, nurse staffing is of great importance right now. And as the medical community is experiencing staffing concerns across the board, we are also feeling those here within the school district. So as of right now, there are 45 school buildings that require a nurse to be present. And of those, we have 23 nurses who have indicated that they do not require any accommodations and they are able to staff in full time. We do have 9 open positions. We have 7 staff members who have requested some version of a part-time accommodation. For some, they're only able to work 1 day a week. Some are able to work up to 4 days a week. But that's also kind of a symptom of where everyone is in as far as education. And many of our staff members have children who are also attending school remotely. And so they have had to request some part-time accommodations to accommodate their own children's learning needs. We have 3 who are out on a temporary FMLA that we don't foresee to be something that would last through to the end of the school year. And then we have 3 who have requested a COVID or a health-related FMLA. In our last board meeting, there were some questions about our ability to staff some of our positions and use licensed practical nurses if possible. And so I did want to bring back to you some information regarding the Kansas State Board of Nursing Nurse Practice Act, which states that this is specific to a school setting. Each registered professional nurse in a school setting shall be responsible for the nature and quality of all nursing care that a student is given under the direction of the nurse in the school setting. Assessment of the nursing needs, the plan of nursing action, implementation of that plan, the evaluation of that plan, those are all considered essential components of professional nursing practice and is the responsibility of the registered professional nurse.
Ms. Morris, this is Dr. Nguyen. For those 9 vacancies, do you have applications that have been made for some of those 9 positions?
We have had applications, since the beginning of the school year. We've had a lot of those nurses who came to us were brand new or very limited experience registered nurses. And it's very difficult to be a grad nurse or a new nurse and move into a school setting without a strong clinical background, especially because they're going to be working independently. And so we did have, like I said, several nurses that applied in that situation. We did have some that we were willing to offer positions to, and they came back during the interview process and indicated that they felt like entering school nursing at this time during a pandemic was not where they wanted to go in their career. So we have had several that have backed out of interviews.
That's interesting because I've been in communication. I think I've shared this with you as well as Ms. Tushman, that I've been communicated a couple of registered nurses currently working at hospitals that had previously worked at the district on a grant, and that I will follow up to see the response that if they received a response from HR, and I'll share that with you now because that's not my understanding as to how they were, the response they received. So thank you for that information.
Thank you, Dr. Wendt. I would welcome having that information and be very willing to follow up with them if that somehow just hasn't made it to me.
I've given Ms. Tushman a couple names, so she has had them for at least 2 or 3 months now.
Oh, this is Wanda Brownlee Page, and my concern is nationwide there's a problem with the hospitals trying to find nurses. We're trying to find nurses. So if we have 7 openings, and my concern is I don't want the secretary to end up to be the nurse. That's not fair to them. And that has happened at some of our schools. We advertise that we're going to provide this and this is our plan. And we got secretaries being nurses. And that has happened. And it shouldn't happen. So how are we going to replace or make sure when the kids do come back, who's going to be there to do this? We said in our reentry plan, the nurses are checking the temperature, they're doing this. Or how do we fill those gaps?
In the past, we have always reached out to the staffing agencies that have been able to provide subs, daily subs or long-term subs. And that's how we've staffed our buildings in the past. We have added 4 additional nurses to our staff to help fill those vacancies in the meantime. Again, when I came on at the end of the last school year, we did have 6 full-time agency nurses that were covering for vacancies. So we are up in the number of vacancies that we have, but we did end the last school year with 6. So we are up, but we're not too much. We don't have that too many more vacancies than what we have had in the past.
Okay, but the only difference, we're going through COVID. It's a little different. And in our reentry plan, Matt helped me. Nurse supposed to help take the temperature, do this, do that. And it can't be, you got to have some continuity of care where there's a consistent person. Because if this person's coming in and this person's going out, how do you have that continuity of care?
Yeah, we have reached out to our staffing agencies to let them know we're not interested in daily subs right now. We are looking for people who are willing to commit to a long-term contract and finish out the school year with us. And so that's the 4 that we have obtained are people that have committed to finishing out the school year with us.
Okay, that's 4. So are we working on getting the other? You said there was 9 openings. So the other 5?
So we did actually just have a new one today. So we were at 3 today. We had an additional nurse, and so our agency is working to send us new candidates and get them started quickly.
Because that's my concern. I don't want the secretary to be the nurse. They're not going to pay for that, and that did happen, sweetheart. Now you just came in last year, right?
Yes, I've been here since the end of February.
Okay, but it has happened. We don't want that to happen, and it's COVID. So we need to be real concerned and make sure that everything we're saying on paper for reentry, it's actually happening. And the temperature gauges, are they working? Some people have said they're not working consistently.
Is it possible for us to get some of these questions and accusations, questions and concerns maybe documented and have them follow back up with us so that we're not catching them off guard?
I'm not catching. I've already asked these questions before. I just didn't bring this up. No, be fair. I've asked this before. You can call it whatever you want to call it. That's your job. You should be able to answer the questions. I've asked them before.
So I'm asking Randy, is it possible for us to get a list of questions so it's not just fired off at the question after question? I'm not sure if you're feeling the pressure like I'm feeling, but that's a concern I have, Randy.
Yeah, we'll follow up. I mean, I think we want to, I know sometimes some of these questions have been asked previously, and then presentations will prompt new questions, which is okay. But we will keep track of these questions and make sure that we get a proper response to everyone. I know Ms. Morris and Mr. Anderson and the rest of the team are working hard, and things change, and so we will make sure we get these questions answered. And if we can't answer them tonight, I know sometimes questions come up that cannot be answered, and that's okay. But we'll take note of them and grab those answers.
And Mr. Lopez, I don't mean any harm. When I worked for 30 years in the district, people ask me questions, I answer them. I didn't call you out your name. You may not like what I asked, but if that's your job and that's what you're getting paid to do, then we need to do our job.
And
well, I agree. I agree, Ms. Page. I think we're all trying to, and I know there are shortages. I don't think this is a stressful time for all of us. And so I just, I want to respect that. And, I don't have any problems with the questions you're asking, and I don't think any of our staff do. We're all trying to work through this. It is a stressful time for all of us. And so we're all doing the best we can. And I think the questions that board members ask are good because they make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep our students and staff safe. So I don't think I don't see any issue with questions, but I do want to make sure that our staff have the appropriate time to give the answers or find answers if they don't have them right away. So I hear y'all, and this is a stressful time for everybody.
Just to clarify, as you well know, we take notes during the board meeting. We're taking notes of all of these questions. I agree, Ms. Page, these are questions that you have asked, and we have discussed them almost on a daily basis. We are discussing different scenarios in the event that it comes time to open schools and we still don't have nurses, because we are really trying every possible scenario. So, and one thing I know about Ms. Morris is she's very cautious about sharing with you what is solid in our plans. So there are lots of conversations that we're having and lots of what if we did this and hypotheticals that we're not ready to share. But just to reassure you, Ms. Page, these questions, and we appreciate that you keep asking them because we need to find a solution. So for sure, keep asking. Just know that we are discussing them every day and looking at every possible way to come up with the answers and to share them with you as we have them.
Is one of the reasons why we were giving this information to you now, because we want you to have all of this information prior to making a decision. And so all of these factors may help you decide which way to go. If we, our goal for our plan is that every building would have a nurse. Yes, we don't want our secretaries to have to be the nurses of the buildings. Absolutely not. Safety is our number one priority for our staff and our students. And so if that is a factor that will cause us to, make some decisions, then that's what we have to do. But we just wanted you to be aware of where we are with our numbers moving forward. Before we move on to HR, I just wanted to check if Dr. Corriveau or Elizabeth Gronway were able to join us again.
No, I don't see them, Matt. Okay. I keep an eye out, and even if it's toward the end, I'll have them share.
No worries. I just want to make sure that if they come back on, that we give them that opportunity to share kind of what's happening in Wyandotte County, since that is where we serve our families and our students. And I just want to make sure that we have that available to them. So we're going to move on to our human resources, and Ms. Jody Mitchell, Director of HR, is going to discuss with us what we're receiving at a district level as it relates to employee accommodation requests.
Again, yes, I'm here to talk about our accommodation requests. And this information that you see on the screen is specific to teachers. So it gives kind of a breakdown of what we've had to date from July to current. And as you can see, obviously November is the peak. We did ask teachers to, if they could provide us their accommodation request by certain date that would help us with staffing. And so we did anticipate that we would have a lot of requests for November. But as you can see, 143 accommodation requests from teachers, and then a breakdown of where the requests are coming from. We did check in today. We have had 2 additional requests since the 20th date, one of them in middle school and one of them in elementary. Next slide, Matt. Okay, so the accommodations that doctors are requesting, the breakdown here and what teachers are asking for is to work virtually. As you can see, 107, majority of them are asking to work virtually. The next 26% is 1 or more suggested, and most of those are saying, I would want to do a virtual and a hybrid, for example, or, I would do a hybrid if the district provides childcare, for example. So we have others that are giving some additional thoughts behind that. So, and this, although very small, I think, also tells you a breakdown by school location, and also by type of teacher that's requesting. So again, you can see it, but Wyandotte High School has 22 of the teachers that are requesting accommodation. And due to the high numbers on the other slide, you can see that most of them, we would anticipate the majority of those are requesting to work from home. We also see the SPED category and math, which are, of course, our high need ones that we have a hard time finding teachers for. Those are the majority of teachers that are requesting. So the slides I presented are mostly around teachers, but of course we do have counselors, social workers, even principals, our central office staff, others that are requesting accommodation as well. And those numbers, if you're wondering, about 103 total, what we considered non-teacher, are also requesting accommodation. So some of those obviously are employees that work in schools. And so wanted you to have that number as well.
Ms. Mitchell, this is Dr. Nguyen. Could you help me remember what's the criteria for accommodation?
So if someone is requesting accommodation, they would submit a form to us. So they could request accommodation for medical reasons, if they themselves are at high risk, if they live in a family that has high risk or is around other people, family members that are high risk. They could request for childcare needs if their child, either the daycare is closed or their children aren't back in school and they don't have a care provider, then they could request accommodation for that. And
verification is what again?
So if they are requesting for medical reasons, their doctor would have to complete a form for us, and the doctor would have to tell us, based on their condition, what would be accommodations. And we asked for 3. If there's 3 that are available, what would be those accommodations that they would recommend from a medical perspective. So we've been collecting that. And if it's childcare related, we're just asking just simple questions. There's nothing, we're not asking for, something from your daycare provider that says they're closed. We have so many that are medical related that, as you can see, those are the majority.
Okay. So, if it's medical, of course, the doctor has his license to be concerned about as far as not providing any false information.
Correct.
But if their children are not in daycare, one would think that they would have to verify that.
We could go that route. You know, some of the students are our students, KCK students, so we know, you know, if they're, you know, kindergarten, first, second, you know, those elementary ages, that they are not in school.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So next we'll have Ms. Lisa Garcia Stewart, our Director of Student Services, discuss where we are with collecting the enrollment forms from our families, asking for the learning mode that they would like to have for their students when we do come back to in-person learning.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, President Lopez, board members, Dr. Miguel. Just wanted to share our updates since our last reentry meeting, our presentation, and that is that, as you heard earlier, we did provide our parents an opportunity, parents, caretakers, and our guardians, an opportunity to complete a survey that was sent out through Infinite Campus Parent Portal for them to make a decision for each child in their home. So it could vary depending on their preference for each child in their home to return in January, provided the decision of the board, if we return in January for remote learning, or to return for hybrid. As of today, this afternoon, we've had 16,459 responses for each student. Of those responses that have been returned, we have 8,932 that are opting to return in person hybrid model. We have 7,527 have elected to continue in remote learning. Our current enrollment as of today, December 1st, is 21,334. So we do have 4,875 responses that are remaining. So we extended the window last week, and we know that it is important to give you as much accurate data as possible. So schools are still reaching out. They're working so hard to make sure that parents have an opportunity to complete the form. They're continuing to call student services. So between our department and the schools, the IIOs, we're making sure that we're continuing to encourage parents, if they have not yet, to conform to elect hybrid to return in January or with remote learning. Again, our TIS, our ESL department have all been very supportive to remove the language barrier, technology issues, and we've continued to accept forms even as of today. From yesterday through today, we've had 500 more responses. So we want to continue to make sure that we're providing and gathering all the information we need to from our families.
So now we'll have Lenora Miller speak again, and she's going to share some updates on some of the challenges that our operations teams are facing currently and how it's impacting the work that they're trying to do to help us reopen schools and to serve our students during remote learning.
Thank you, Matt. So the operations team beginning this school year was highly impacted because we were in remote learning. We came up with some creative ideas how to keep all of our employee groups in a working fashion. So kudos to the nutritional service team, the transportation team, our shop trades, our custodians, and even our TIS, and the police department actually were doing roles that were outside of their regular job description. And our priorities were safe buildings to enter, clean and sanitized buildings. Meals was a high priority. And then, of course, taking care of our staff to keep them safe. And so what we're finding today, the snapshot that we've been experiencing these last couple of weeks, is the entire support team that I represent is experiencing up to 160 absences a day, which is really, truly impacting our priorities. The first priority is to feed our families. And because we're having to pull from other departments for emergency last minute coverage, for whatever leave reason these people are out on, it's been very challenging. And we can spend, not only myself, but a lot of other brains in the room, up to 3 hours just trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get this meal site covered today? We cannot close it. What we're finding is now that support structure is experiencing their own staff coverage issues due to high rates of absenteeism. As a sad result, we're going to have to consolidate some of our meal sites, and we will be communicating that out to our families. And we will also begin reviewing potential additional meal deliveries opportunities as opposed to congregating at sites. So later, I will be providing you some numbers on what those meals that we've been providing later on in the presentation. But we wanted to let you know that we are experiencing some huge challenges. And I think it's a result that most of our classified operational employees live in our community. So it's absolutely sliding over into our employees. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Lenora. So we know that this will not be an easy decision to make. However, we wanted to provide you with some information that was just shared to help make a more informed decision for our staff and student reentry. As a leadership team, to support you in this decision, we thought it would be helpful for us to propose some possible recommendations for reentry moving forward. And so per the KSDE gating criteria as kind of our foundation for guidance, we have 3 options. Option A would be approve postponing the January return of students for in-person learning until the end of 3rd quarter, which would be students returning on April 5th, and then staff or instructional staff returning on March 22nd. Some things to consider for this option. This option allows for a dedicated timeline for when staff and students can return. And by having this dedicated timeline, staff and families can properly plan ahead for the decision that's made. Option B is to approve postponing the January return of instructional staff and students for in-person learning until COVID-19 positivity rates decrease. And in parentheses, you see that that number is less than 15%. So that would be that positivity rate that's currently sitting at 32%. With that model or with that option, once we know that the numbers are down to under the 15%, we could do a 2-week notification to get our instructional staff back into the buildings and to allow for that classroom and building transition time. We would then go another 2 weeks, so approximately 4 weeks from that time, to allow for the phasing back in of students and do a similar phase in how we did with the January, where we started with EC through our early childhood through 2nd, and then we would do our 3rd through 5th, middle, and then high school. Considerations for this plan. This plan allows for more flexibility for an early return of staff and students based on if the number of COVID cases decrease. We've added the recommended KSDE gating criteria number under 15% as our goal for return, knowing that that's what the state would recommend. The issue with this plan is that it doesn't allow for as much time for families and staff to plan for the transition. And so that's just one of the issues that comes up on that option. Option C is to continue to move forward with the decision that the board made in October, which would be to return in January. Some considerations for this, it would be the earliest possible return that we could have for our students and staff. Based on the current numbers in Wyandotte County at 32% positivity rate and within the district at about 30%, There's still a concern that the positivity rate will not be at the level that the board would deem to be safe for a return. One thing to consider is we have been working with the Wyandotte County Health Department on a weekly basis, and they have been working with a couple of local laboratories in the metropolitan area to provide COVID surveillance testing for all school sites in Wyandotte County. And so staff and students would have access for early detection, and then also it would help with contact tracing. It is not nasal pharyngeal testing. It is an actual saliva test that they would be given. And so we would work with the Wyandotte County Health Department to help train our staff or our nurses on how to give those COVID tests. And then finally, we would need to know as soon as possible if this is the option you'd like to go with, to ensure that everything is ready to go for our January 4th return for teachers, and then a mid-January return for our students. Just a reminder that any approval of these options would not, I'm going to repeat, would not impact the continuation to provide services, those in-person services, to our students with those highest needs. So our students that are in the SAILS and STEPS classrooms, as well as those students that are receiving ESL services for in-person learning. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to allow for discussion and questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Board members, questions, thoughts?
Hi, this is Dr. Stacy.
And this is Dr. Nguyen. When will we, or Dr. Miguel, when do we receive any reports of student achievement for first, actually semester, now that we have been total remote?
We should be getting some data in soon from the interim assessments and from FastBridge. So we'll have some data to share with the board soon.
We can also run a report on our grades as well.
Right, and grades is something that we've been monitoring and discussing, and as well as attendance and student engagement.
So will we have some of this data before the end of December?
We can have this to you next at our next board meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, because I mean, for me, I need it. It would first, positivity rate is not going to go anyplace. That's going to be what it is.
Right.
But some type of measure of student performance, in my opinion, if we continue with either option A or B, still, what kind of follow-up correction are we doing?
Yeah,
So-
we can provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
This is Dr. Yeager. Is it possible to table it to our next board meeting to get additional understanding? And the second,
Go on.
and the second question is, since we do have the gating criteria in place, since it is like you all mentioned, it is 32%, does that mean that we will not start school in January if the gating criteria is followed? Is that correct? But I think the key would be for us to approve it in time for us to allow for proper planning. So I'm fine with, as Dr. Nguyen mentioned, getting a little more data and postponing it until our second meeting in December so that we can give clear direction and instruction.
And as
This is Wanda Brownlee Page. I think we need to make a decision tonight. I'm not saying we don't need the information about grades. We do. But as a parent, I don't think they need to wait till December the 15th, because people got to get their child care, what have you. We need to make this decision. If it's at 32%, and they're already predicting it's going to go up again, we saw what happened after Halloween. Now we're going to deal with what happened after Thanksgiving. And then, wow, then some more. So it's not getting better because our behaviors haven't changed. That we need to make a decision tonight to do this and give people time to make plans, to make preparation.
Well,
We put it back. That's just too much.
well, then I would propose that, or make a motion that we select option B, so that we give the opportunity for the positivity rates to be decreased to 15%, because even if we get to April and it's not at 15%, then we're postponing it again and again.
Well, that may be what we have to do.
Right, so that's my motion, is that we choose option B until the positivity rates are decreased under 15%.
And just as a reminder to the board, if you want to change that number, if you are okay with it being 15 or slightly above, you can make that decision. We just put that as a reminder that that's the recommendation from KSDE. Again, like KSDE would say, and a lot of other districts are doing, is some have created their own gating criteria based on what KSDE has given them. And so we want you to understand, like, you can make a change to this if necessary. If we're getting closer to being at 15, but it's slightly above, we could still do whatever it is that the board would like to do.
And
This is Yolanda, and I know we have a motion on the floor, so I don't know where conversation is okay at this point.
There is a motion on the floor. To be fair, earlier we looked to see if there was a second.
I'm not ready to second. I have some questions.
Then I withdraw my motion.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yeager. Ms. Clark, go ahead.
My question is, I'm looking at these options and I see what I would like to say, yes, this is the right thing to do. However, I'm very concerned about, so what Dr. Nguyen has mentioned in grades and stats, and I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about emotional stability, definitely for our staff, but I'm going to speak to our students at this point and not being visible for this amount of time. And I know parents have the option. So if we were to say, sure, let's go with option B or let's go with option A, then I think my questions and concerns would be, how can we go above and beyond to make sure our students are getting the services that they need to be able to be stable during this time? Because they're not visible to people. We're talking about food services being different. I'm interested in numbers and grades and where they are. So that's where I would say we pivot some of our efforts, is how are we making sure that our students are getting what they need? We already struggled when we were in person every day. And so now we're taking them out of school for almost a year, and it's no one's fault, but that's where we are.
And I think the biggest struggle for me is that staff, like, Wanda mentioned, staff need to know where we stand. Parents need to know where we stand. And as a parent, we could postpone it, but we would need to I feel we would need to make a decision in December for sure. And with the COVID rate as it is, I can't say that if in April is 20%, that would give us an environment. I think if we honor that gating criteria, that would help parents to know, plan before winter break. It would help teachers to plan before break. And I agree that a wraparound approach, and maybe Matt could clarify, if we make a decision tonight, would that all help you guys with the wraparound approach that may be needed, that you would be able to provide at our next board meeting?
Yes, we can continue. We're continuing to plan for ways to continue to increase the amount of, like right now, we started with a smaller group of special education and ESOL. A next layer of our work needs to be, where are those kids that we are noticing not connecting at all, getting them into our buildings. Another layer is to bring in maybe not our newcomers to the country, but those students that are our lowest level language proficiency need to come in, as well as other students with special needs. So we can continue to bring students in, keeping it limited in the amount of students we bring in, so we don't, get too many people and start spreading. But that would be a possibility for us, as we want to. The last thing we want to do is not provide services to our students. Dr. Miguel.
I was just going to clarify that in any of these scenarios where we bring students back, it would still be with that hybrid model of 50% 2 days a week in person and 50% remotely, right? So we're not still talking about bringing all kids back at once.
Dr. Miguel, I have a question. I know some districts are looking at keeping their middle and high schoolers remote, but maybe bringing back their elementary.
Right.
Because being the youngest learners, is that something you might want to bring back to us as an alternative on the 15th, and maybe looking at that, keeping our older students as remote through the third quarter, but maybe bringing back the elementary?
Yes, and that's something that we have discussed. So we could, when we come back on the 15th, and especially when we bring achievement data, we could bring a modify or an option C where we continue with a decision to return in January, but just with the youngest kids, and keep middle and high school remotely. And that would allow us to control numbers.
And we would also have a lot more data on what's going to happen over the next 10 days to make a really good decision on whether we want to do the 4 weeks, the option B or the option A. And with the grades and stuff, I know
that would also help Ms. Humphries with the concern that we have with the number of people requesting accommodations. Because that's, if we decide to come back in January and we have still the request for accommodations, we'll be struggling somewhat to provide some in-person services. So that would help. So we could add an option D where we modify, we propose a modification to this decision that you made in October.
I would feel, I know that's putting a lot on your staff to put stuff together over the holiday break and stuff, but I would feel more comfortable having a little bit more information and making that decision on the 15th. That's my preference.
So just to clarify.
Mr. Henderson, this is on the Brownlee page. Now, please don't forget, we just heard, I think it was Lenore Miller give the report about her staff. That's a problem. Now, we don't have the people to clean, to serve. They're getting sick. We're at 32%. And I'm not saying I don't care about the kids. I do. I like to see them be alive. Now, that also means we're going to come up with some things for student services. We got to encourage parents, churches, everybody. But we'd like to see them be alive. And I don't think we should still keep jerking around with this. People need to know. Now, I'd like to make a motion, we accept option A. I'm not saying they can't do that other research, but we need to let people know now. I second that motion.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to go with option A. I will open it up for discussion. I will just throw in a couple of things. I understand, given all the data that we've heard, it's tough. And thinking about our staffing, would we even have the staffing, the appropriate staffing? That's, I think, what we're seeing in surrounding districts in terms of why they're having to go virtual in some cases, whether they have the substitutes necessary to staff classrooms. I think that is an issue. My concern would be regarding making a decision tonight versus the 15th is if we make a decision and then the board decides to do something a little different on the 15th, how would that cause any issues with our staff and our leadership if they start going down a certain road for a couple of weeks, and then if the board makes a different decision? That would be a concern, not that would happen. But I also, I echo, I think, we see the data, we see the numbers in terms of our children, especially in Wyandotte County, this is disproportionately affecting our low income Black and brown kids, and their educational attainment. And, I think our teachers are working above and beyond what they're normally doing. They're doing an amazing job. It's just where we're at. And so I do want to say that I think our staff are working so incredibly hard, doing some of those wraparound services now. So, I do know that a lot of that is in place. I do want to just give them their props for what they're doing. But any other thoughts, questions? There's a motion in a second. Ms. Drew.
One of the things that I look at is back in October, we made the decision to go completely remote. Other districts chose to do something differently. We have stayed on the path with that. Have things been the way we expected them to happen? No. But we are seeing the better results of the fact that a lot of our teachers are supportive of us because we recognize that we need to keep the students out of the buildings for now. I think it's necessary for us to be able to go with option A so that parents, students, as well as other staff members and district staff workers can put something into place. If we stay on the path that we're on, I think we'll reach what we want to achieve. But when we change up the plan, it may create some other issues. As Wanda mentioned, food service, we're having issues with that. There's not enough staff to be able to work. So I would suggest that we made the right decision to go into January. Right now, we have the numbers going up within our county. So I would suggest again that we agree to go with option A, move it until the end of April. That will give the staff enough time to work out an additional plan that maybe we can come back during the third quarter. But if we stay on the path that we're on, I think we'll have greater success. Will our numbers be where they should be? No. But we are looking at the full picture. I think in the long run, as we come out of this, we can find greater success and greater support across the board within the district. Thank you all for listening.
And this is Yolanda, and I'm going to sound like a broken record. I actually would be fine with option A as well, but I'm worried about the kids coming back. My biggest concern is where do we pivot our efforts? I'm hearing we need to shut down food service sites. I'm hearing we can't pull the kids back in school. I hear a lot of what we can't do, and I just need to know what we are able to do for these kids, Randy. You said it, who is impacting, and this is going to impact them mentally. It's going to impact them physically. We're going to keep seeing this cycle, and we're going to see it for the next 2, 3, 5 years if we're not coming up with other creative ways to keep our kids engaged. And the middle school and high school kids, sure, I'm going to say they're probably the most impacted by not being expected to walk into a door. I'm not saying they should walk into a door, but I am saying, where is their carrot? And where do we find their carrot to make sure they're still learning? I happen to live in a house with a 15-year-old right now, and I know my struggle, and I'm here every day. So that I can only imagine what other parents are going through. And then the expectation of not having to have their cameras on. And I know there's some rules and regulations behind that, but I also know what it feels like to talk to a bunch of blank screens. So I don't know where you are. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know where you're learning. It's so many other things that, sure, we want them to live through COVID, but we want them to make it in life. So.
And Ms. Clark, if I may, at the next board meeting, together with achievement data, what we can bring is we have schools that have already implemented wraparound services, and we can invite them in to share with you. I have to say, if there is a silver lining in all of this, is to see how we are getting better at this, just because we had no choice and we had to engage kids. Yeah. And so we have come a long way in the services. I know you're concerned about the screens, but I was in a few classrooms today where all of the screens were blacked out and the kids were responding like this because the teacher was calling on them and they were giving the response and they were working on the whiteboard. So we have made a lot of improvement in how we reach kids. But I will be very happy to bring a couple of middle schools just to address the age group that we know we are concerned about, because it's easy to disengage, to share with the board and with the public what they are doing to wrap those services around students.
And Dr. Miguel, so thank you, because I don't want my comments to be as if staff is not doing their job. So please understand, I'm not saying staff is not doing their job. So please understand that. And for those kids that are there and they're answering and they have that motivation, that's great. But that percentage that is not, you know, and I know we can't save them all because we would have some of those same issues in the classroom. So I get that.
And those are exactly also the conversations that we have been having this week about now naming the kids that we haven't seen and what's our next step, because we need to do something different. So we are all on the same page, and we'll be more than happy to bring as much data and information as you need, because like Mr. Anderson said, this is a very hard decision. Yes, so we want to provide as much information as you need.
Yes. And I think also, how are we incentivizing our students? So I'm going to say that too. How are we incentivizing our students to make sure that they have something? As a kid, I've had everything taken away from me this year. Last year I had my graduation. we haven't talked about dances. I can't go to my school. I cannot see my friends. Then you make a vote that I still can't walk in my school. What carrot have you given me? What incentive have you given me to be that student that you want me to be? Mm-hmm. So I'm done. You can tell I have some passion behind this. This is bothering me. I feel like we're going to have COVID-19 kids in the professional environment in 10 years, and you're going to be able to tell it and feel it. And I don't want those to be our students.
but you're trying to teach them how to survive. This is life. We've all experienced something. And no, it's not a good feeling, but they've got to build some endurance. It starts at home too. The school can't do everything.
But when you have a home that you're having to provide services for, because home is not what home may be to others, then I get it. I hear what you're saying, but we also have seen those students that they depended on you, Ms. Page. When they walked in, they smiled because you were there and you gave them that feeling of being in class and somebody that wanted to be there with them. And they don't have that in-person touch right now.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same token, we're going to lose. We're not going to have the staff. You're talking about being there. What's going to happen if they're not there? You're saying that they need to be there, but they're not going to be there.
And I'm not saying in person is the thing. All I'm saying is wraparound approach is what I'm hearing. And I feel, as a board member, I feel like I need to see that really, really strong.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask a question? And this is just a question that, sorry, does the March 22nd date include a spring break or not include a spring break?
We want to take them.
It includes the spring break.
Okay, so is that smart? I mean, some districts and colleges are saying no spring break just to make up time. If the
I don't think
the positivity rate is down, how is this consistent with the dates that, number of days and things? Have we thought through that?
It's the number of minutes. And so currently what we have for the number of minutes, we meet the requirement, even having a spring break, and we'd be done with school with students prior to Memorial Day.
There's no snow days, so we don't have to worry about that.
No snow days. There are some stipulations with that, so we have
to. We need to make sure we do it right, though.
Right.
But absolutely, if the rates aren't, and maybe I'm not misunderstanding you, Dr. Nguyen, but if the rates
No, you're understanding. I'm saying, come on now, let's be for real. If instruction has not hit the mark, then maybe we need to come back a little earlier. Maybe even that is a return date for staff to get some training on some new programming or what. I mean, you haven't even told us anything about, I can't even remember the new program. But, you know, if we want it, if everything is perfect, we want staff hit the ground running. So if that means come a couple days early after, you know, spring break, everyone should be willing to do this.
I would have to refer to Dr. Covington, Mr. Covington, to see about pay. If we would ask them to come in, we'd have to adjust the calendar again if we would do that, or we'd have to pay our folks past their 186 days contract. So it's an option.
No, we're not asking anybody to work more than what they already contract for.
And we call
contract is contract, but that's okay. You know what?
We vote.
I think that's fair to keep in mind, though, just to keep an eye on, you know, future what's going on down the pipe. But I think it's things to continue to consider. So thanks for bringing that up. I think so. There's motion. There's been some great discussion, y'all. I appreciate the thought. Really good discussion questions that we all keep in mind. But there's motion on the floor. It's been seconded, and I will ask Ms. Smith to call the vote, please.
I'm sorry, I need a reminder of the motion.
Hey,
Option A.
To adopt option A.
Option A, thank you.
Option A. Mhm.
Okay. So I think I'm first.
Hold on.
Yes.
Matthew, will you?
He has to call your name.
Oh,
I didn't know what was going on right now.
Hold on just a second. Yolanda Clark.
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew.
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphreys.
Janie Humphreys, I will vote yes. That's the way I was leaning towards anyway. I would like to have had more information, but that's the way I'm leaning, and it seems like the rest of the board's leaning that way too, so I'll just go ahead and say yes.
Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Stacy, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miguel and Mr. Anderson and staff for that information.